Hi, I'm Aarik Danielsen from the Columbia Tribune, and I am here with Richard King, one of the main organizers of the Roots and Blues and Barbecue Festival, which is just around the corner, coming up September 28th through 30th at Stevens Lake Park. And so wanted to just chat with Richard for a few minutes about some of the music that folks can expect to see down at Stevens Lake Park at the end of the month. And so I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is just, you guys have done a good job over the years of kind of mixing and matching new artists with artists who've been at the festival before. And this year there are some folks like the Avett Brothers, like Margot Price, Nathaniel Rateliff, who have been here at Roots and Blues in years past. And so I just wonder for you guys, beyond kind of the name recognition, beyond maybe some familiarity for the audience, what's kind of the musical benefit of having an artist back at different points in their career?
Well, the one thing is we've developed relationships with these artists. Sure. And most of the time, these artists have put out new records too. Sure. So we always want to be, and then I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Some of these I thoroughly enjoy, and I think sure. they are great festival bands. Yeah. So I really do like to mix it up. In fact, this year we mixed up more of the regional than we ever have. Okay. Yeah. And I was really happy with that. But it just fell into place where all these people were available and they were real interested in coming back. And then there's a fair share of new ones in there. Sure. But there's also many other factors, like there are certain artists that you're always offering for, and sometimes they just say no. Yeah. What can you do about it?
Sure. I want to double back because of something you just said. I mean, what in your mind, I know you and I have talked about this before, but just for folks who are watching, what in your mind makes a good festival artist? What do they have?
Well, I think, to me, I'll give you what I think is the perfect example is a band like the Mavericks. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen them in probably 20 years. It was really a long time. And they appeared for the first time, I think, 3 years ago. Okay, yeah. And I remember I was sitting with my sister who was visiting, and I just realized, oh my God, I got to go. The Mavericks are on, and I don't want to miss them. Yeah. And I got over for about the last 10 minutes of their set, and I had never seen our crowds so up and active and embracing what was going on the stage. I mean, we always have good crowds. That's the thing I'm really happy about. But they were, like I said, like I've said to people, they kind of start the party, those guys. Sure. And with the whole Raoul thing and I think it's up to a 10-piece band now. Yeah. I just think those are the kind of things we're looking for, and I think people react in great ways to bands like that. Yeah. So those guys are great. And then you go back to somebody last year with Marty Stewart and the Mavericks back to back. Yeah. I just thought that was phenomenal, and I believe also Emmylou Harris and John Prine back to back last year also on Sunday. You could hear a pin drop with John Prine. Yeah, sure. And you saw a few people shed some tears. So those are also great festival acts, I think really the key is the audiences that we bring in, and they're if it's time to be quiet, they're quiet. If it's time to get up and dance, they get up and dance, and that is kind of what we'd like to see happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course, one of the headliners this year, and I know this is an artist that you and I have talked about over the years, you guys have worked to try to get at various points in the life of the festival, and it just, like you said, it works out some years, it doesn't work out other years, but it's Sturgill Simpson. And so I'd just be curious to hear you talk a little bit about, first of all, what's made him somebody that you guys have targeted over the years, and what does it feel like to kind of bring him in finally this year?
Well, musically, I think he is totally in line with what we're doing. We're trying to accomplish at Roots and Blues. And sometimes we go off track a little bit, which people have reminded me when we go off track. But Sturgill, he just came up through the folks. I know that he and Prine are good friends, and all those Nashvillers that we really like. Yeah. They all sort of have this little group of folks that, and he just fit right into that. Musically, he fit right in. And I don't know how many people had come up and pester me. Why can't you get Sturgill Simpson? Why can't you get Sturgill Simpson? So, and I do listen to people. I don't know everything. I love it when people send me new artists. So, but Sturgill had been on our radar, and we finally were able to get to the agent. And I do think though that we have had the success we've had here in Columbia does resonate with artists and agents. And reach out and say, hey, what are your dates? Like, we've already had 2 requests for what our dates are for next year.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, you know, I really think in some ways we're a unique event, and we try not to be like everybody else,
Sure.
and hopefully we're accomplishing that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of my favorite things to talk with you about pretty much every year, and we haven't really done it yet, so I'm excited to ask you now, is, you know, I always feel like a festival is made a little bit further down the poster. You know, the headliners
Sure.
are what they are, but, you know, it's those acts that are going to play at, you know, 3 on a Saturday or something that really decide whether a festival is worth its salt. And so I'm curious for you, who are some folks that are maybe a little bit further down, or maybe folks who are maybe not, you know, on the average festival goer's radar, that you think people are going to walk away, you know, from that weekend going, man, this is a new favorite of mine?
Well, I don't think, it's been quite a while since I know Kelly Willis has been out there. And fortunately for me, you know, I've had experiences with Kelly Willis way back in the Blue Note days.
Yeah.
So her agent, who represents several artists that I really like, an Austin person, and he said, hey, Kelly's got a new record out, would you consider it? You know, and of course he sent me the record, and I'm like, God, Davis, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's
is
a
she
really
available?
It's a good album.
Yeah, and he said, of course she's available. I said, well, you know, so I'm excited to see Kelly. I haven't seen her in so long.
Yeah.
I doubt she'll remember who I am, but and then I think another artist that I think people will really appreciate is Israel Nash.
Yeah,
who,
for sure.
as far as I know, has never appeared in Columbia. And I was on the air with Kevin at KOPN the other evening, and he thought that Israel was, I don't know, Californian or whatever. I said, no, I think he's a native Missourian.
Yeah, he lived in Missouri in his youth at some point. I'm not sure of the timeline, but he absolutely
Southwest
did.
Missouri.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, a repeat, but a performance that I really think that it was so. She just captured everybody. Was Amanda Shires last year.
Yeah.
I really. And I had never seen her live before,
Yeah.
so
Her new
I guess
record is phenomenal.
Yeah,
It's really good.
Yeah, so those are 3 that I think on the undercard. And you know, and I say this to you every time we talk. It really is the most fun part.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, those are the artists that would jump at the chance to be on our festival, especially when they see our announced headliners. And they are also the ones that people are the most surprised about. And,
Sure.
and every year, I will get, you know, like, who was it? Here Come the Mummies that one year. And people are coming up to me, wow, I've never heard of those guys. You know, well, I said, well, they played at the Blue Note twice when I owned it. I don't know what, I did everything I could to get you there, you know. And you know, and I could always use that, hey, where were you?
Yeah, sure.
But, you know, and that's happened to me. Some of these artists, you know, that I know you're very familiar with, that have been here in Columbia, but for the most part, you know, it's a little different when you're in the club world.
Sure.
You know, not everybody gets out on a Tuesday night to see, you know, Big Sandy and the Fly Right Boys. That was another one where people were like going, I've never heard of them before. I go, well, they've been to the Mojo's at least like 10 times. But you know, it's that is my my fun doing this festival.
Yeah,
you know, it really is. And when people send me music. And, you know, thankfully, I still have relationships with most of the agents and managers, and they will reach out to me and say, hey, this is just out, you know, like Kelly's new record.
Sure.
I wouldn't have known about it unless he had sent it to me.
Yeah, and for context, if you're, you know, you kids out there that are just coming to this video for Roots and Blues, Richard was the longtime owner of the Blue Note and Mojo's now Rose Music Hall, so a man who knows his stuff. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, you guys have a new initiative this year that I think is really interesting, calling it the Missouri Roots Songbook, and it's kind of, I guess, functioning a little bit like a Hall of Fame for the festival, right, where you guys are going to be honoring different Missouri artists each year. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Well, as you know, we hired a new director this year, and I don't think there's, you know, I think getting some new blood into the group is really, it can be inspiring. And you know, Tracy Lane is our new director, and she and I have been longtime friends. Yeah. But I also hired her to manage the Blue Note back when I moved downtown from the business loop. So she is she's over the top crazy about music. Yeah. And I always knew that. You know, she was Note Girl and she DJed at parties and stuff like that. Right. But when she came on board, she had, of course, ideas, and anybody that comes on board with us, I encourage them. I want to hear your ideas. You know, I want your input. I'm the 64-year-old guy that's not out there all the time. So Tracy, that was one of her first ideas. But she's also director of the Blues in the Schools program, which was the first thing she wanted to be involved in, was Blues in the Schools. Okay. And she has she presented me with an agenda for Blues in the Schools, and this was a year and a half ago when she was wanting to get that job. And I was like, whoa, this is unbelievable. So not only does, you know, her input in music for the festival and the Songbook thing, which I think is a wonderful idea. There are so many artists to draw from. I've had people yelling at me already about who should be next year. But that and then you know, putting this all together with the Blues in the Schools program, it really works for us. But I got to tell you, Tracy was the driving force. And of course, she knew that I had a relationship with Chuck Berry. Yeah. And it was really funny. I hadn't talked to the folks at Berry Farm in quite a while, and I called out there, and and Fran answered the phone, who was the person that answered the phone all those years that I would call out there and ask to see if Chuck wanted to come up to Columbia. And she was there, and she said, well, I can't guarantee anything now because it's in the family and the lawyer's hands, and here's the person you talk to. And they were 100% excited about doing that. You know, and it also reminds me, you know, my introduction to Chuck Berry as a performer at the Blue Note was through some people here in Columbia that were involved in the Columbia education world, Columbia Public Schools. And Chuck's first visit to Columbia was also scheduled around visits to Hickman High School and Knockbridge High School. So so this all kind of really falls together with Chuck Berry, you know, cool. and we're talking, hey, do you have any photos? And I have everything of Chuck Berry, so we're good there. But you know, and the other thing is I have this relationship, you know, having worked with Chuck so many times, I have this relationship with his daughter Ingrid and his son Butch, and we got to be great friends. Yeah. You know, they just embraced me, you know, and so they're going to represent the family, and I'm not sure who else is coming up. Okay. I did invite some other, I think, people in St. Louis that would mean a lot to Joe Edwards, the guy that runs Blueberry Hill, who is also really close to Chuck. Okay. So we'll see how many. I know the family's coming. Yeah. And some other folks from St. Louis maybe coming.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, something to look out for. Just a way to honor. Somebody who pretty much synonymous with Missouri music and rock and roll. So. Yeah. Well, again, Roots and Blues is going to be September 28th through 30th. We've already got a little bit of coverage on our website, great profile of Columbia's sister band, the Burney Sisters. So read that if you haven't already, and we'll have more artist profiles and coverage rolling out this weekend. You can find that at columbiatribune.com. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good to see you.